The Battle of Waterloo, fought on June 18, 1815, was a decisive conflict between the French army, led by Napoleon Bonaparte, and the Allied forces of the Seventh Coalition, commanded by the Duke of Wellington and Prussian General Gebhard Leberecht von Blücher. Taking place near Waterloo in present-day Belgium, the battle marked the end of the Napoleonic Wars. Napoleon aimed to divide and conquer the coalition forces but faced strong resistance from the British and Prussians. As the French army had lower numbers, Napoleon split his forces and aimed to take on the Prussians separately, before they could group up with Wellington. However, Wellington's defensive tactics and the timely arrival of Blücher's troops turned the tide against Napoleon. His defeat led to his abdication and exile to St. Helena. The battle ended the Napoleonic Wars and reshaped European power dynamics. The Opium Wars were two conflicts between China and Western powers in the mid-19th century, primarily Britain. The First Opium War, 1839 to 1842, arose from China's attempts to suppress the opium trade, as British merchants illegally exported opium from India to China, causing widespread addiction. Opium was Britain's most profitable commodity trade of the 19th century. Tensions escalated after Chinese officials put bans in the import of opium, leading to war, which China lost, resulting in the Treaty of Nanking. This treaty ceded Hong Kong to Britain and opened several ports to foreign trade. The Second Opium War, 1856 to 1860, further weakened China, with more ports opened and increased foreign influence. These wars marked the start of the so-called century of humiliation for China, undermining its sovereignty. The Opium Wars were also an example for how an outside power can weaken another country using other means than military action. The Battle of Sarajevo, part of the larger Bosnian War, 1992 to 1995, was primarily the Siege of Sarajevo, lasting from April 1992 to February 1996. Sarajevo, the capital of Bosnia and Herzegovina, was besieged by Bosnian Serb forces aiming to establish Serbian dominance. The city, with its multi-ethnic population, was subjected to relentless artillery shelling, sniper attacks, and blockades. Civilians faced dire shortages of food, medicine, and utilities. Despite international condemnation and eventual NATO intervention, the siege became infamous for its humanitarian impact and length, being one of the longest in modern warfare. It ended with the Dayton Accords, which brought peace to the region. Indonesia is predominantly Muslim due to historical trade and cultural exchanges. Starting in the 13th century, Muslim traders and missionaries, primarily from the Arab world, India, and later the Malay Peninsula, brought Islam to the Indonesian archipelago through trade routes. These traders established relationships with local rulers and communities, gradually spreading Islamic teachings. Over time, the assimilation of Islamic practices blended with existing local customs, leading to a unique Indonesian Islamic culture. The fall of Hindu-Buddhist kingdoms and the rise of Islamic sultanates in regions like Aceh and Java further solidified Islam's influence. By the 16th century, Islam became the dominant religion, establishing Indonesia as the country with the largest Muslim population today. During World War II, the fall of Hong Kong occurred when Japanese forces invaded and captured the British colony. The assault began on December 8, 1941, just hours after the attack on Pearl Harbor. Despite being heavily outnumbered, British, Canadian, Indian, and local defense forces resisted the Japanese advance. The battle lasted for 17 days, marked by intense fighting and significant civilian casualties. On December 25, 1941, known as Black Christmas, Hong Kong formally surrendered to Japan. The occupation lasted until Japan's surrender in 1945. The period was marked by harsh Japanese rule, food shortages, and widespread suffering, leaving a profound impact on the local population and laying the groundwork for post-war changes in the region. The evolution of automobile powertrains has been marked by significant innovation over the decades. Initially, vehicles were powered by steam and electricity in the late 19th century. However, the internal combustion engine, ICE, running on gasoline or diesel, soon became dominant due to its efficiency and refueling convenience. In the late 20th century, rising environmental concerns spurred the development of alternatives, including hybrid vehicles combining ICE with electric motors, providing better fuel efficiency and reduced emissions. The 21st century has seen rapid advancements in electric vehicles, EVs, powered entirely by batteries, driven by improvements in battery technology, charging infrastructure. Other emerging technologies include hydrogen fuel cells and synthetic fuels. This ongoing evolution reflects the automotive industry's response to changing trends. The 1973 oil crisis began in October when the Organization of Arab Petroleum Exporting Countries, OAPEC, proclaimed an oil embargo, targeting nations perceived as supporting Israel during the Yom Kippur War, including the US and Western Europe. This sudden supply reduction caused oil prices to quadruple, leading to widespread economic turmoil, inflation, and energy shortages. The crisis highlighted the West's dependency on Middle Eastern oil and prompted shifts toward energy conservation, alternative energy exploration, and strategic reserves, reshaping global energy policies and geopolitical relations. It also ended a period of high economic growth in many Western countries. The Iraq War began in 2003 when the US, supported by the United Kingdom, led a coalition to invade Iraq, aiming to dismantle Saddam Hussein's regime, eliminate alleged weapons of mass destruction, WMDs, and end support for terrorism. Despite lacking a UN mandate and later finding no WMDs, the invasion toppled Hussein. Although the war only endured from the 20th of March to 1st of May 2003, approximately 23,000 to 39,000 civilians died. The following occupation of Iraq resulted in even higher numbers of civilian casualties. These years of violence, sectarian conflict, and insurgency created a power vacuum. The US withdrew in 2011, leaving a fragile Iraqi government. The war destabilized the region, contributed to regional tensions, and enabled extremist groups like ISIS to emerge, leading to ongoing conflict and humanitarian issues. The Summer of Love was a social phenomenon in 1967, centered in the Haight-Ashbury neighborhood of San Francisco. It was a celebration of peace, love, and music, where around 100,000 young people gathered, largely driven by the growing counterculture movement. This movement opposed the Vietnam War, embraced civil rights, and explored alternative lifestyles, including communal living and psychedelic experimentation. The era was marked by influential music from artists like the Beatles, Jimi Hendrix, and Janis Joplin, reflecting themes of love and unity. The event also highlighted issues like drug use and societal change, leaving a lasting impact on culture. The event also set the stage for further demonstrations in Western countries, marking a societal shift. Spanish silver mines in South America, particularly in present-day Bolivia and Peru, were central to the Spanish Empire's wealth during the 16th and 17th centuries. The most famous mine was Cerro Rico in Potosi, Bolivia. Discovered in 1545, it became one of the world's most productive silver mines. The Spanish employed the mita system, forcing indigenous laborers to work in harsh conditions. Silver from these mines was crucial for global trade, as it flowed through Spain to the rest of Europe and Asia, influencing economies worldwide. This also granted Spain political power. The exploitation had devastating effects on indigenous populations due to forced labor and introduced diseases. Uncontacted tribes in the Amazon are indigenous groups that have little to no contact with the outside world. These tribes live deep in the rainforest and have remained isolated for centuries to preserve their traditional ways of life. Their knowledge of the forest and sustainable survival practices is remarkable, yet they are highly vulnerable to modern threats such as deforestation, illegal mining, and diseases to which they have no immunity. Protecting their habitat is crucial to preserving their cultures and respecting their way of life. Governments and organizations work to safeguard their territories and uphold their rights by acknowledging and respecting their lifestyle choices. The Battle of Berlin was the final major offensive of the European theater in World War II. It took place from April 16 to May 2, 1945, as Soviet forces launched a massive assault on the Nazi capital. The Red Army, led by Marshals Zhukov and Konev, encircled the city, facing fierce resistance from German troops, Hitler Youth, and Volkssturm units. Despite their efforts, the German defenses crumbled under the immense Soviet pressure. Adolf Hitler, aware of impending defeat, committed suicide on April 30. The battle saw intense urban combat and heavy casualties on both sides. By May 2, Berlin's garrison surrendered unconditionally, marking a crucial step towards the end of World War II in Europe and leading to Germany's unconditional surrender on May 8, 1945. The battle symbolized the collapse of Nazi Germany and the shift in post-war power dynamics. During the interwar period, Germany faced significant political struggles marked by instability and extremism. After World War I, the Weimar Republic was established in 1919, but it struggled with economic hardship, like hyperinflation and unemployment, and political challenges, including frequent changes in government. The Treaty of Versailles fueled national resentment, as many Germans felt humiliated by its harsh terms. This unstable environment gave rise to extremist movements, including the Nazis and Communists, who capitalized on public discontent. Political violence and attempted coups were common, culminating in the rise of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party in 1933, which marked the end of the Weimar Republic and the beginning of a totalitarian regime. Texas declared its independence from Mexico on March 2, 1836, after tensions rose over cultural and political differences, including issues like slavery and governance. Settlers from the United States, living in the Mexican territory of Tejas, opposed the centralized rule of Mexican President Antonio López de Santa Anna. After major events such as the Battle of the Alamo and the Goliad Massacre, Texan forces, led by Sam Houston, defeated Santa Anna's army at the Battle of San Jacinto on April 21, 1836. This victory secured Texan independence, leading to the establishment of the Republic of Texas, which remained a sovereign nation until it joined the United States in 1845. South America's ethnic diversity is a result of its complex history. Indigenous peoples initially populated the continent with rich cultures and languages. The arrival of Europeans, primarily Spanish and Portuguese colonizers, in the 15th and 16th centuries introduced new groups and led to a mixing of cultures. The subsequent African slave trade brought millions of Africans, further adding to the diversity. Over centuries, there has been significant intermixing among indigenous, European, African, and later Asian populations, creating a rich tapestry of ethnicities and cultures. Additionally, waves of immigration from Europe, the Middle East, and Asia in the 19th and 20th centuries contributed to the ethnic mosaic seen today. Simón Bolívar, born in 1783 in Caracas, Venezuela, was a prominent South American statesman and military leader. He played a crucial role in the independence movements against the Spanish colonial empire in South America during the early 19th century. Known as the Liberator, Bolívar significantly contributed to the independence of countries like Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and Bolivia, which is named after him. He envisioned a united, independent Latin American federation, but political tensions and regional interests eventually led to its fragmentation. Despite this, Bolívar's vision profoundly influenced the identity and political landscape of South America. The attack on Pearl Harbor occurred on December 7, 1941, when the Imperial Japanese Navy launched a surprise military strike against the United States naval base in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. The attack aimed to preemptively eliminate the U.S. Pacific Fleet as a potential threat to Japan's expansion efforts in Southeast Asia. Japanese forces deployed over 350 aircraft from 6 aircraft carriers, targeting battleships, airfields, and other facilities. The strike resulted in significant casualties, with over 2,400 Americans killed, numerous ships sunk or damaged, and over 180 aircraft destroyed. This event led to the United States' entry into World War II, as it declared war on Japan the following day, marking a turning point in the conflict. Tunnel rats were specialized soldiers during the Vietnam War who operated in the narrow, dangerous tunnel systems used by Vietnamese guerrilla fighters. These tunnels served as hidden communication and supply routes, hospitals, food and weapon depots, and living quarters. Due to the tunnel's tight and hazardous conditions, often filled with traps and enemies, tunnel rats required exceptional bravery, agility, and typically a smaller body frame. Equipped with a pistol, flashlight, and knife, they ventured into the dark, claustrophobic, and often unsecured tunnels. Their missions were crucial for disrupting the tunnel networks, presenting extreme physical and psychological challenges. Mutiny on the Bounty refers to a historical event that took place in 1789 on the British Royal Navy's ship HMS Bounty. The ship was on a mission to transport breadfruit plants from Tahiti to the Caribbean. The crew, led by Lieutenant William Bligh, faced harsh conditions and strict discipline. Discontent grew among the crew, leading to a mutiny led by master's mate Fletcher Christian. The mutineers seized the ship, setting Bligh and loyal crew adrift in a small boat. Bligh's remarkable navigation led them to safety after a 3,600-mile journey. The mutineers attempted to settle in Tahiti and Pitcairn Island, with varying fates. The event has inspired numerous books and films, exploring themes of authority and rebellion. Japanese discipline can be attributed to a blend of cultural, historical, and social factors. Confucianism has greatly influenced Japan, promoting respect for authority, hard work, and social harmony. The education system also emphasizes discipline, cooperation, and responsibility from an early age. Social harmony, known as wa, encourages individuals to behave in a way that maintains peace and order. Additionally, the strong work ethic, driven by concepts like jiri, or duty, highlights the importance of fulfilling responsibilities. Lastly, Japan's community-oriented culture values the group over the individual, motivating people to act in disciplined ways to benefit the collective. These elements together contribute to the disciplined behavior often seen in Japanese society. The Battle of Dien Bien Phu took place between March and May 1954 in Vietnam. It was a decisive confrontation in the First Indochina War between French colonial forces and the Viet Minh, led by General Vo Nguyen Giap. The French established a fortified camp in a valley, aiming to draw the Viet Minh into a conventional battle. They expected that the Viet Minh were not able to transport heavy artillery through the difficult terrain. However, the Viet Minh surrounded the position with heavy artillery, concealed in the surrounding hills. After intense fighting and significant casualties, the French forces surrendered on May 7, 1954. This defeat led to the Geneva Accords and ultimately to the division of Vietnam, paving the way for the Vietnam War. John D. Rockefeller was one of the most influential entrepreneurs and started as a clerk in a logistics company. He rose to power by founding the Standard Oil Company in 1870. He leveraged economies of scale and efficient refineries to drastically reduce costs. Through aggressive practices such as price undercutting and securing secret railroad deals, he kept competitors at bay. Rockefeller built both vertical and horizontal monopolies, controlling the entire supply chain of the oil business and integrating smaller companies into Standard Oil. These strategies granted him immense economic power and significant influence in the industry. His business tactics revolutionized American business practices and established him as one of the most powerful men of his era. The Irish Troubles were a conflict in Northern Ireland from the late 1960s to 1998, rooted in political and sectarian tensions. The main issue was the constitutional status of Northern Ireland. Unionists, loyalists, mostly Protestant, wanted to remain part of the UK, while nationalists, Republicans, mostly Catholic, sought unification with the Republic of Ireland. Key groups included the IRA, Irish Republican Army, and UDA, Ulster Defence Association. The violence resulted in over 3,500 deaths and deep societal divisions. The conflict largely ended with the 1998 Good Friday Agreement, promoting power sharing and disarmament. Operation Tomahawk was a military operation during the Korean War, launched on March 23, 1951. It involved a large-scale airdrop by the U.S. 187th Airborne Regimental Combat Team, which was part of the United Nations forces fighting against North Korean and Chinese forces. The operation aimed to cut off enemy supply and communication lines by capturing key positions near the town of Munsan Ni, north of Seoul. The airdrop was significant for its tactical use of airborne forces to surprise and disrupt enemy operations, contributing to the overall UN strategy to push back communist forces north of the 38th parallel. Despite facing challenges, the operation successfully achieved its objectives, aiding in the UN's advancement during the conflict. Deindustrialization began in the mid-20th century, primarily in Western countries like the UK and the US. Post-World War II, these regions experienced economic booms, but by the late 20th century, globalization intensified, and manufacturing jobs moved to countries offering cheaper labor. Technological advancements reduced the need for manual labor, increasing automation and efficiency. Meanwhile, the service sector expanded, shifting economic focus. Economic policies, environmental regulations, and shifting consumer demands also played roles. This phenomenon has led to significant social and economic problems. Many areas in Western countries that used to be centers of heavy industry and mining became areas with high unemployment and crime rates. At the same time, countries like China rose to power by becoming manufacturing centers. In the 1980s, the UK experienced significant industrial strikes, primarily due to economic restructuring and government policies under Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. The most notable was the miners' strike of 1984-1985, led by the National Union of Mine Workers, NUM, against the closure of coal mines, threatening jobs and communities. The strike, marked by intense clashes, ultimately ended in failure for the miners, weakening the power of trade unions. These strikes reflected broader tensions between the government and labor movements, as Thatcher aimed to curb union influence and promote a free market economy. The formation of the Turkish Republic began with the dissolution of the Ottoman Empire after World War I under the leadership of Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. The Turkish War of Independence was fought against occupying Allied forces. The national movement, driven by the desire for sovereignty and modernization, led to the establishment of a provisional government in Ankara in 1920. Following the Treaty of Lausanne in 1923, which recognized Turkey's independence, the Republic of Turkey was officially proclaimed on October 29, 1923. Ataturk became its first president, implementing sweeping reforms to secularize and modernize the nation. The Greek War of Independence, 1821 to 1830, was a successful struggle by Greek revolutionaries against the Ottoman Empire, which ruled Greece for nearly 4 centuries. Inspired by Enlightenment ideas and fueled by growing nationalism, the Greeks sought to reclaim their cultural heritage and autonomy. Key figures included Theodoros Kolokotronis and Ioannis Kapodistrias. The war saw both guerrilla and conventional battles. International support, particularly from Britain, France, and Russia, was crucial, leading to the decisive Battle of Navarino. The Treaty of Constantinople in 1832 officially recognized Greece as an independent state, marking the end of Ottoman rule and the birth of modern Greece. Latin became the dominant language in Europe due to the expansion of the Roman Empire. As the Romans conquered vast territories across Europe, they imposed their language and culture on the subjugated peoples. Latin served as the administrative and legal language of the empire, facilitating communication and governance across diverse regions. After the fall of the Roman Empire, Latin persisted as the language of the Catholic Church, which held significant influence over European societies. The Church's use of Latin in liturgy, scholarship, and education helped preserve its status as a lingua franca. Therefore, Latin had a similar status as English has in Europe currently. Additionally, Latin was the language of intellectuals and academics during the Middle Ages and Renaissance, further cementing its role in European cultural and intellectual history. The Dutch Golden Age was a period in the 17th century when the Netherlands experienced great wealth, cultural achievement, and global influence. This era followed the 80 Years' War, which led to the independence of the Dutch Republic from Spanish rule. The Dutch established a powerful maritime empire, dominating global trade with their innovative shipbuilding and navigation techniques. Economically, the Dutch excelled in banking, the stock market, and the spice trade, with cities like Amsterdam becoming financial hubs. Culturally, this period saw remarkable contributions to art, with masters like Rembrandt and Vermeer, and advancements in science and philosophy from figures like Spinoza and Huygens. This era marked the rise of a thriving middle class and was characterized by a spirit of enterprise, tolerance, and innovation, shaping the Dutch Republic as a leading European power. The Battle of Gettysburg, fought from July 1 to 3, 1863, was a pivotal clash in the American Civil War. It occurred in and around the town of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, between the Union Army of the Potomac, led by General George Meade, and the Confederate Army of Northern Virginia, commanded by General Robert E. Lee. This battle was the war's bloodiest, with about 50,000 soldiers killed, wounded, or missing. It ended with a decisive Union victory, halting Lee's invasion of the North. The outcome boosted Northern morale and is often considered the turning point of the war. President Abraham Lincoln later honored the fallen with the Gettysburg Address, redefining the war's purpose.